Pages Online. This is a special edition called Tuesday's Tips. Every Tuesday we're going to post a new tip on how to use our special sponge painting system. These are designed specifically to give you additional information as you continue your growth in our program. Let's get a start and take a look at today's tip. Today what we're going to be looking at, again, is the sponge. And we're going to be looking at the second motion with the program, which is simply to pat. Now, when we pat with our sponge in this program, it is very important that you remember three simple things. The first is that when we pat, we make sure that the sponge is mostly on the dry side. Squeeze that sponge tight. And if you need help with that, we can show you some tips on how to squeeze your sponge. When we talk about the sponge needing to be dry, here is a tip. When you put the sponge in, you can squeeze it out with your fingers if you're able to. You could take your whole hand and squeeze it out. If you do not have the strength to physically squeeze the sponge to make it dry enough, you may take a used towel that's part of your program, put the sponge in the towel, wrap it up, and squeeze tight the towel with the sponge inside, and that will also help you to get the sponge so that it's nice and dry for the patting motion. Tip number 2 when we're patting is that make sure that when you pat, you are soft and gentle and light. We've asked you to put your finger on the back of the sponge here, which is fine for the setup of the basic program. When you have that finger there and you're patting into the painting, if you can feel that finger pounding into your painting, you are way too hard. You want to be soft. You want to be gentle. You don't want to really pound onto the painting. Rule number 3 for patting, in a word, is simply random. And we must be random. If we pat the same pat over and again, it's boring and it will look like tire tracks going across our painting. It will not look right, okay? We're gonna show you a few little ways of how you can avoid that to make it randomized, and we'll see how that works. Let's take a look. So I just have a blank piece of paper here today, and for our purposes, I'll just use a little bit of the Payne's Gray so we can mix that up into our palette and see what's going on. Again, Tuesday's tip is all about the second motion for today's painting. You will not use the brush for anything except to mix up the color. Once we've mixed up a color that we're happy with, we'll put the brush into the water to clean it out, and we'll go ahead and use the sponge. Now here's the trick. We'll put the paint onto the sponge. I've already made sure that the sponge is squeezed and dry. What we want to do is we want to pat sometimes on a corner of the sponge, sometimes on the next corner of the sponge. And as we continue to pat, we keep hitting the sponge with a different angle of attack. This is what allows us to get a randomized pattern for that particular area. If we, on the other hand, had simply taken the sponge and never changed the motion of the patting, you can see what you have here. It's tire tracks going across your painting, and it doesn't look right. We want to be randomized. Again, you pat, you lift, you move your wrist. You pat, you lift, you move your wrist again, pat, lift. And each time you're patting, you're getting a different corner or facet of the tip of the sponge. That will allow us to get a very randomized pattern. We want to try, when we're doing this particular motion, we want to try to stay away from this. This is another motion that comes into play with our third pattern, and we'll talk more about that in our next tip. But for now, we want to make sure we get a full lift off the page before we move our sponge into a different position. And that's it. Nice and simple to get a nice pattern that's random on our painting. We hope that you have enjoyed this little video and that this tip was helpful for you. For more of Tuesday's tips, check out our website under the free classes for Tuesday's tips. If you want, also check out the full video, which is all about learning how to paint with our sponge system, which is the free video on our website, The #1 Painting. And we look forward to seeing you then. Thank you.